a proud principal here at Marvin Camras Children's Engineering School. I want to thank all of you, Camras community, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here and learn about our candidates in the 30th Ward. I would like to take a moment to thank our Camras PEC, as well as Alonso and the Belmont Cragin United, as well as our candidates. As I call your name, if you could please wave at everyone. Ruth Cruz, Jessica Gutierrez, JuanPablo Prieto, and Warren Williams. We will have Alonso Zaragoza go over the rules for the forum, as well as be the time, and I will be the timekeeper. Our moderators will be members for our Marvin Camras PRAC, Janet Manzajares, Henry Reynoso, Monica Valencia, and Bianca Magallanes. And with that, Alonso, if you could please go over the rules.
Hi candidates, here are the rules for this forum. This is a bilingual forum in English and Spanish. Questions will be asked in both English and Spanish. Each candidate will have 2 minutes total to answer each question, except for a quick fire round in which they will have 10 seconds. Candidates can choose in which language or languages they will answer within their 2-minute allotment of time. We will rotate the order for every question, and each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing statements.
All right, so question number 1, and we'll start with Ms. Cruz on this one. Working with neighboring elected officials. What happens in neighboring wards impacts the 30th? How will you work with other neighboring alderpersons to make sure the entire community progresses?
Buenas tardes. Pregunta número 1. Vamos a empezar con Ms. Cruz. Tema del trabajo con funcionarios electos vecinos. Lo que sucede en los barrios vecinos impacta el distrito 30. ¿Cómo trabajará con nosotros, otros concejales vecinos, para asegurarse de que toda la comunidad progrese?
Sí, thank you for the question. Thank you for having us. I want to start off by saying thank you to Principal Amenisi, Camras School, and also Alonso Zaragoza for having me this evening. I just want to make a real quick explanation before I answer the question. I do have a prior engagement this evening, which Alonso had been aware of. My event has been scheduled before, so I do have to leave early than the 2 hours. But again, thank you for having me. It is important that we all work together to answer your question. It is this is not only about the 30th Ward, this is all about Chicago. And yes, we do have our neighborings, and I will be working with all the elected officials around the 30th Ward to have a good image of what we all need to accomplish together. We share schools. Our residents sometimes live in one area and go to schools in another district, so all of us are impacted by working together. So we'll be meeting with our elected officials. We talk about the situations that we have, that we're facing, and how to all work together. This is all about a teamwork. This is not an individual approach. It's about working together. Yo estaré trabajando con los demás concejales de los otros distritos para saber de los problemas y de las cosas que necesitamos cambiar. Como dije, a veces nuestros hijos viven en un vecindario, pero van a la escuela en otro vecindario. So, al final del día todos tenemos que trabajar como un equipo, porque eso no es solamente individual, es de trabajar todos y para saber que cómo vamos a traer soluciones a la comunidad. Es importante tener una línea de comunicación donde uno al otro podamos expresar lo que necesitamos, pero también que si hay proyectos y hay fechas de vencimiento, que se haga como se tiene que hacer para que todos seamos responsables.
Thank you. Mr. Prieto? We're going to jump around and rotate the order if that's okay.
Same question.
Same question.
Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you to Camras School and Belmont Cragin United. Thank you all for being here today. My name is JuanPablo Prieto. Yes, making sure that we're working across wards is very important. I have a track record of coalition building and making sure that I'm communicating with as many stakeholders as possible so that we can not only come up with but implement solutions. It takes a community to do that, and I'm ready to have the community with me to make sure that you all are involved involved in the decision-making process and that we're working across wards, regardless who wins in the other wards, forming a relationship there and making sure that we're implementing common sense solutions. You all as residents should not have to worry about which street is in which ward. That's on us to figure out and to figure out how to improve your lives. So, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Mi nombre es JuanPablo Prieto, gracias a la Escuela Camras y a Belmont Cragin United y a ustedes por estar aquí para escucharnos. Yo tengo un historial de trabajar con diferentes partidos que necesitan venir a crear e implementar y realizar soluciones. He hecho eso en los últimos 8 años en la CTA, donde he trabajado con departamentos municipales y también funcionarios electos para realizar las metas que necesitamos para ayudar a los residentes. No debe de ser el trabajo de un residente decidir cuál calle o tratar de saber cuál calle es en cuál distrito. Eso es para nosotros, los funcionarios electos, para trabajar juntos y no importa quién gane en los otros distritos, yo voy a trabajar y formar relaciones con esos distritos y con esos concejales para asegurar que nosotros estemos trabajando juntos para mejorar las vidas de los residentes.
Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Williams, same question.
Yes, that scared me a little bit. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. So to answer your question, I already have experience with working with other wards because I myself and 30th United belong to a coalition of community organizers that includes 30th Ward, 45th Ward, 39th Ward, 33rd Ward, and did I say 35th Ward already? Or 45th Ward, then my apologies. So I have a very close relationships with all of these people, and we have very close working relationships. And not only that, I have close working relationships with Rosanna in the 33rd and Carlos in the 35th. So I want to continue to build on those relationships and hold them accountable, and also have them hold me accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Hi. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jessica Gutierrez. I ran 4 years ago, and we almost won in the 30th Ward. And in that time afterwards, I've made sure that we need to build not only with our elected officials and building a coalition, but making sure that our community-based organizations and our nonprofits and our schools all have a seat at the table. It's gonna be important not only to build with other wards, but our state representatives, our congressmen. Because one thing that I don't want to happen when you come into my office is that we say that this is not your jurisdiction. We hear that way too much, right? That, an alderman can't handle that. We need to have offices and aldermanic offices that are centers of resources, where everyone can find out what's going on in the city, what's going on in the county, what's going on in the state. I've made sure to build all of those relationships, and it's about bringing everybody's voice to the table. Hace 4 años que postulé para esta posición y casi lo logramos. Y desde entonces yo he estado creando muchas organizaciones y una coalición, pero no solamente de posiciones municipales, pero también del estado, del condado. Yo quiero que mi oficina sea un centro de recursos, que nunca te van a decir que no podemos bregar con esos problemas en esta oficina. Eso no es cómo funciona una comunidad, y tenemos que trabajar juntos. Y creo que eso es lo más importante, y también que hay un asiento en las mesas para las escuelas, para los padres y también para las organizaciones comunitarias.
Thank you so much. All right, the topic of constituent input and use of public resources. Reese Park is scheduled to hold yet another 3-day festival this year with community residents. Residents feel like they were either not informed about it or were not given authentic platforms to have their opinions heard. What is your stance on having large for-profit festivals in our public parks? And what is your plan for inclusive constituent participation on issues such as this? With this question, we'll start with Ms. Gutierrez.
Tema de desarrollo económico. Tema de trabajo. Tema, aporte de los constituyentes, uso de recursos públicos. Reese Park está programado para celebrar otro festival de 3 días este año y los residentes de la comunidad. Los residentes sienten que no se les informó al respecto, que les dieron plataformas auténticas para que se escucharan sus opiniones. ¿Cuál es su postura sobre tener grandes festivales con fines de lucro en nuestros parques? ¿Cuál es el plan para la participación inclusiva de los electores en temas como este?
What a grand present that the current alderman is leaving us with as he leaves office. I live half a block away from Reese Park, so I'm very familiar with the festival. I had to call some of my friends to even figure out who exactly these musicians were that were coming to Reese Park. This is why our community needs to be the first line of defense. This is why when we talk about zoning and we talk about festivals and anything that's going to come into the 30th ward, that the community needs to be at the forefront. And therefore, I want to have an advisory board, right? I don't want to be the one that's making all of those decisions. We should be making those decisions together. And if, right, there's a good presentation and we think that it might be a good idea for our community to have that, then let's make sure that we're having the small business owners, right, that are in our community, that they're the ones that are providing the food, right? Let's make sure that that we're part, right, of every single step, and make sure that the promoters, right, of that festival, that they're writing a check to our community organizations, that they're giving us, right? They're paying millions of dollars for artists to come and possibly destroy some of our only green space. Yo quiero tener un concilio de zonificación, y yo creo que eso va a ser tan importante en una comunidad como el Distrito 30. Qué regalo que nos ha dejado el concejal que tenemos ahora. Sin decirnos nada, yo vivo en una cuadra de Reese Park, y yo creo que nuestra comunidad tiene que estar al frente de todas las decisiones que vienen a nuestro pueblo.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. So what we're seeing with this is a tale as old as time. The political machine taking money from large corporations and using public money for private interest to make a bunch of people very, very rich and destroying our resources. So it's not just enough for people who come in to write us a check, because that is time that people cannot use that park. What we need to be doing, and what I've done actually in the past with 30th United, when we saw these zoning issues happening, we went and knocked every single door in a neighborhood, and we informed neighbors what was going on, and we had to actually do translation into Spanish and Polish to make sure that people were able to understand what was happening with some of these developments. And that is what I want to continue as alder. And so that's why we'll fight extraordinarily hard for what's called community-driven zoning. This is where the entire neighborhood votes on what the zoning issues or changes will be, and votes on whether things like this should happen in their community. This is different from a committee because I'm not picking this. The community is out there voting, and this is also great for people who are under the 16 and above, and people who are undocumented or who cannot vote for whatever reason, to make sure that they have a say in their community and the destiny in which it goes.
Thank you. Same question, Ms. Cruz.
First and foremost, we have to respect our residents. And it is unfair that our residents were not aware of what's happening soon in Reese Park. So one, we have to also exercise respect But also we have to include our residents to be part of these decisions. It's a lot of things are happening in the community, but when you are strategic, when you're detailed, when you plan different things, and that's something that I have done in my experience in management, and you develop this type of groups that we're all gonna be working together and we're gonna be holding each other accountable, this is what we're gonna bring accountability to our neighborhoods. To say, if you wanna be part of our neighborhood, if you wanna have some sort of fest, let's bring those ideas to the table and see how we're gonna approach them. Again, it is unfair that the residents are not aware, but it's also important that us as residents, we're part of this. That we go out and express our concerns, that we go to the alderman's office and say, hey, I disagree with this, I want to be part of it. How can we bring the right festivals to the community? Who's going to impact our youth? What are some other resources they're going to bring? If we're going to have a festival, what are they going to be offering for our community? Are they going to be bringing sports? What are going to be activities they're going to bring? We have to have a well balance. Everybody wants to have also festivals, but it's the right way to do it. And one is informing our community, what are you bringing to the table that is going to have an impact on our community, and what is going to be the economic impact in by having a festival also in our community. So we have to look at all different aspects, but again, it becomes to having the right festival at the right time with the right resources. We have to respect each other. We have to respect our parks as well. It is true, a student, it's our youth, our kids, ourselves, we want to go for a run at the park, which I miss doing that because I've been so busy. But those are the things that we can, and we can even cross the park because we have so many things going on.
That's a great question, and I'm running to bring transparent and responsive representation here to the 30th Ward, and that's exactly what it sounds like, right? We're going to have the community with us every step of the way. We're going to establish participatory budgeting. Every ward gets $1.5 million annually to improve the ward, and that's your dollars, that's your tax dollars, and we need to make sure that you get a say, that you decide what gets done with those dollars. I want to establish different committees that will bring the residents in to the aldermanic office to make sure that you all are making decisions. Those committees include a zoning committee, a small business committee, and a youth committee. The zoning committee will review all zoning requests that come into the 30th Ward, and the residents will decide. I agree with Mr. Williams. We need to bring in, regardless of status, residents that can vote on participatory budgeting and zoning, and also those under 18, because it affects you. It affects you all if we shut down Reese Park for 3 days where you can't use those facilities. So if the community votes that they want the festival and they want to come to the festival, we're going to say you need to change this so that you're not blocking this access, then that's what we're going to present to the organizers. Yo me postulé para traer representación transparente y responsable. Y eso incluye la comunidad. Ustedes son los residentes, ustedes pagan los impuestos que proveen estos bienes públicos y ustedes deben de decidir cómo se usan. Voy a establecer un comité para zonificación, también para empresas pequeñas y para la juventud. Y yo quiero que los residentes, sin que importa qué estatus tiene o también de 16 para arriba, que puedan votar en la zonificación.
On the topic of crime and safety, how would you address the epidemic of gun violence, carjackings, property theft and damage, business and residential break-ins? How is that different from the current plans in place? After my colleague translates, the question will go to you, Mr. Prieto.
Mi pregunta es, ¿cómo abordaría la epidemia de violencia con armas de fuego, robos de vehículos, daños a la propiedad y robos a negocios y residencias? ¿En qué se diferencia de planes actuales en vigor?
Yeah, that's a great question. Public safety is on the top of the mind of a lot of residents. And look, I feel it too, right? We're having more and more crime closer and closer to home. we need to put a community-driven solution to address these issues. That includes having the appropriate level of police presence in our neighborhood, making sure that police officers are getting out of their vehicles to talk to us as residents so that we can rebuild that trust. We need to hold CPD leadership accountable so that they increase the number of civilian positions, so that we bring in mental health experts so they can respond to calls involving homelessness, substance use, and mental health crises, and we can have the police available to respond to criminal calls. We need to also address the root causes of crime, reopen our mental health clinics, increase access to mental health services, food assistance, youth development programming, and good paying jobs. We can do this through a community approach. Tenemos que enfocarnos en la comunidad cuando estamos hablando de la seguridad. Es algo que muchos residentes están hablando y yo entiendo, el crimen está más y más cercano a nuestras casas, pero tenemos que trabajar con el liderazgo de la policía para asegurar que tenemos el nivel apropiado de policías en nuestros vecindarios y no solamente que estén en la patrulla, pero que se salgan de los vehículos, hablar con nosotros como residentes para otra vez restablecer esa confianza en la policía. También tenemos que decirle al liderazgo de la policía que tienen que aumentar las posiciones civiles en el departamento, que incluya expertos en la salud mental, para que ellos puedan responder a llamadas involucrando a la gente sin hogar, droga o crisis de salud mental, y para que la policía esté disponible para responder al crimen.
So in the first week of January, in Area 5 where we live, car theft was up 151%, and robberies were up by 517%. I mean, public safety, it's much more than just law enforcement, right? It's much more than just saying that we want more police officers. Do we need them? We do. There's a 2,000 police officer deficit in our communities right now. That's how many officers that were missing from our streets. You know, we're not keeping up with recruitment, right? Police officers are retiring, and we're not keeping up with recruitment. And I think that we need to restore the faith back into our police officers, but we also need to hold them accountable. And I think we could do both of those things. We need to work as a community, and I think that and something that I've proposed is that in my first 100 days, I want to make sure that we are going block by block and having an audit of this ward. For the past 20 years, we've had the same alderman who has not shown up, who has not been present, who was at one point the chairman of public safety and did nothing to change these numbers, right? And what are we seeing? More violent acts, more theft, more robbery. We need to bring our community together. And the only way that we're going to do that is having a clear vision of what exactly is going on the ground. Because public safety, it is visibility. It's abandoned storefronts. It's abandoned businesses. It's making sure that there's visibility. That's making sure that all of the police districts, 16, 17, and 25, that are in the 30th ward are all talking to each other. I want to make sure that in my office, I'm going to have a full-time public safety liaison that is going to make sure that all, whether it's the transportation police, the state police, the city police, that they're all speaking to each other.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any question?
Thank you so much. We have a very strong base of volunteers who have been working on this campaign, and one of my volunteers was unable to come to an event because a friend of theirs got assaulted down the street from me. And it took the police 45 minutes to get there. What that says to me is our current way of public safety is simply not working. Let me say this to you. We have, per capita, the second most police officers in the entire country. But yet, we have one of the lowest clearance rates for crime in the entire country. So that is saying that this is not working. That is because we have an imbalance of how we look at public safety. We have become a reactionary city. That is why I propose proven preventative public safety measures, things like reopening our mental health facilities that were closed in 2012, and fully funding our after-school and summer job programs, and I can attest to these things that they work. I come from these after-school and summer job programs. I am former member of After School Matters, and that kept me off the streets when my parents were at work all day. And I am running for elected office, so we know these programs work. We just refuse to have someone with courage put them in place. And when it comes to a police deficit, 41% of 911 calls are made for mental health emergencies. That is why I'm the only candidate on stage who supports explicitly treatment, not trauma, that will send trained social workers out to mental health emergencies, freeing up our police officers to handle actual crimes without raising our taxes. Because 2,000 extra police officers, that is hundreds of millions of dollars in new taxes every single year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz, same question?
Public safety is not only a concern in the 30th Ward, it's across Chicago. And it's a complex situation, but we have to take a comprehensive approach of what is happening. And yes, we do have to look at root causes of crime. And it can be many different reasons. It can be lack of education, that can be lack of youth programs, lack of health resources. So something that I want to bring in because of my experience and what I have been working is always with youth. Our youth are in need of us. We need to make sure that not only we bring more youth programs, but that we also have better youth programs that we already have. So those resources that are being allocated to our youth programs needs to be used wisely, but it also needs to be used in the 30th Ward because our youth, again, it's in need of that help. But also, since day one, and I have been saying it throughout my campaign, we do need mental health professionals working with our police officers. We have to alleviate some of that time, those calls, so it doesn't take 45 minutes to respond to something that is in need. So those mental health professionals can go and help those calls that is needed for that. And again, that will alleviate our police officer to focus on violence, crime calls, or thefts as well. But we also need to expand our CAPS department. And those are community policing, that they can come out to our neighborhood and talk to our residents. But also, again, I go back into also our residents are sharing their concerns. I'm not sure if you know, but some of our community policing officers have cell phones that you can reach out to. You can talk to about your concerns. That might not necessarily be a 911 call, but somebody that they can trust and they can call and explain things that are happening. So we gotta make sure we work with that. But al final del día todos tenemos que trabajar juntos. Necesitamos más recursos para nuestra juventud. Necesitamos agentes de la seguridad pública para trabajar con los policías, y también necesitamos que el departamento de CAPS esté más involucrado en la comunidad.
Thank you. Right. Still on the topic of crime and safety, crosswalks throughout the ward are dangerous as cars do not respect traffic signals or yield to pedestrians and bicyclists. How will you make road conditions safer for pedestrians and bicyclists in our ward?
Los cruces de peatones en todo el distrito son peligrosos ya que los automóviles no respetan las señales de tráfico ni ceden el paso a los peatones y ciclistas. ¿Cómo hará que las condiciones de las carreteras sean más seguras para los peatones y ciclistas en la comunidad?
So traffic infrastructure is very personal to me. I don't know if you guys know, I'm an epileptic, which means I cannot drive. So my main mode of transportation is my bike, or the public transport, or like CTA. And throughout this entire campaign, my team has advised me not to bike to certain places because they cannot risk me dying on the way to events. And that is because of how dangerous this is. And so this is something that affects like disabled people, elderly people, our children, everyone. And this is an infrastructure problem. These things cannot be solved with signs. What we need are protected bike lanes, 19 miles throughout this entire ward. What we need are raised crosswalks to act as like traffic calming things. And these are also good for people who are in wheelchairs so they can get across the street correctly. We need the circular things that go in the middle of streets as opposed to stop signs. And these can also be used as crime deterrents, because the reason we are seeing this spike in crime in this area is because we live next to a freeway, especially on the east side. People are hopping off the freeway, coming in, and flying through. We need to be building things that slow down traffic. And that is where participatory budgeting can come in, because people can vote on what neighborhoods and what areas are the most dangerous and be building infrastructure out there. Thank you.
Same question, Ms. Cruz.
As I have said before, we all want our family members to come home. And I understand sometimes there's people that might get frustrated with some of these bike lanes or protected bike lanes. And, you know, I have heard from residents, like, it takes so long, especially by Addison and Milwaukee. But I always tell people, if it's gonna take you 5 or 10 minutes more, but that's gonna protect other people's life. My husband and his friends always love going biking. My son, I want him to make sure that he bikes from home to school, to Belmont Cragin Elementary School, and come back safe. But this is not only about my family, it's about all of our family. So we have to make sure that, yes, we do protect our bike lanes. It is important that we all work together, and then we all understand. Again, 5-10 minutes is not gonna, we can waste 5-10 minutes doing other things, but we want to make sure that we protect those and that everybody comes home safe. Cuando se trata de proteger las líneas de las bicicletas o de los peatones, es importante de saber de que la gente quiere llegar a casa. Todos tenemos un familiar que nos espera en casa. So, si a veces el tráfico se hace un poquito más de 5 o 10 minutos, ¿qué importan los 5 o 10 minutos? Hay que proteger las líneas de las bicicletas para que todos estén protegidos. En mi familia, mi esposo, sus hijos, mi hijo que quiere ir a la escuela, es Belmont Cragin, en su bicicleta, quieren regresar a casa sanos y salvos. Pero no solamente de mi familia, es de toda la familia, de todos nuestros hijos, de que nosotros como madres podamos saber que nuestros hijos están bien y van a regresar a casa. So, hay que tener un poquito de consideración y decir que está bien estar un poquito tarde, pero sí tenemos que proteger esas líneas y realmente poner un poquito más reglas más fuertes para que la gente pueda respetar, porque todo llega a eso, que seamos respetuosos.
Mr. Prieto, same question.
Thank you. I did want to correct the record real quick, Warren. I also explicitly support treatment, not trauma, and it's on my website. We definitely need to make sure that our infrastructure is much more pedestrian, bike, and transit friendly. We need traffic studies in intersections with high rates of accidents. And we also need traffic studies in intersections that pedestrians and bikes avoid because it's so dangerous, to make sure that we're using the infrastructure dollars that are coming from the state capital bill and the bipartisan infrastructure law at the federal level to invest in these infrastructure improvements. We need to make sure that we do have a network of protected bike lanes that's intentional. So if a different ward is having protected bike lanes put in, we need to make sure that that connects to the protected bike lanes in our ward, and that is intentional infrastructure. We also need to reduce our dependence on cars by investing in small businesses. We need to increase the amount of small businesses in the 30th ward so that you all as residents can get the goods and services that you need, and we can create neighborhood economies so you don't have to leave your neighborhood to get what you need. You can go by foot, by bike, or by transit. Necesitamos, quiero corregir el récord romántico, yo también apoyo la política de treatment, not trauma, y lo tengo en mi sitio. Necesitamos estudio de tráfico en las intersecciones que tienen muchos accidentes y también en las intersecciones donde los peatones no van porque es tan peligroso. Tenemos que asegurar que tenemos filas de bicicletas protegidas. Nos viene mucho dinero del Estado y del gobierno federal para invertir en nuestra infraestructura. Tenemos que usar eso intencionalmente. También debemos de depender menos en los carros y crear microeconomías en los vecindarios, trayendo más empresas pequeñas.
Mr. Chair,
This is exactly why I want to have an audit of our ward, why we need to go block by block. 40% of this ward is not the same from that it was, 9 months ago. The ward has changed that much. We need to see exactly what the infrastructure of the ward looks like, and that's a matter of public safety. Bike lanes are a matter of public safety, right? Crossing lanes are a matter of public safety. And we need to know exactly where they are. We need to see what the ward looks like so we can go out and get to work. So in my first 100 days, I'm gonna hit the pavement and make sure that we're figuring out where are the holes, literally and figuratively, in the ward so that we can make transportation safer for children, for people who bike every day, for our cyclists. There's two very different sides of this ward. There's an east side and there's a west side. On the east side, you're gonna see a lot more cyclists, but I think that we can implement that too in Belmont, Cragin, and out west. We need to make connections. We need a unifier. We need someone who's gonna bring the ward together, right? And figure out exactly where we're going to start. It's time to meet the residents. It's time to figure out what exactly the infrastructure looks like. If it's with biking, let's support a bike grid. Let's make sure that it's all connected in Chicago so that nobody's getting hurt, right? I mean, drivers need to be respectful of cyclists and vice versa. We've seen cyclists, die. We're losing people for something that can be fixed quite easily. We can find the money. We have $1.5 million that come into infrastructure. Let's figure out, right? Let's not only figure out what the community wants, but let's also educate where we need more education on bike lanes.
Time. Thank you. Still on the topic of crime and security, safety, besides addressing mental health, what non-law enforcement strategies or resources do you believe are necessary to address crime?
Además de abordar la salud mental, ¿qué estrategias o recursos no relacionados con la aplicación de la ley cree que son necesarios para abordar la delincuencia? Ms. Cox.
I know we didn't have an opportunity to introduce ourselves, but I am a volunteer at the Avondale Restorative Justice Community Court. And this program helps individuals who have taken the wrong choice, we want to say, and have gotten themselves in trouble. But what they go through is called this peace circle that we all meet, and we come up with a plan of how to restore the harm and how to continue with their life so they don't have a criminal background, but also they continue with their path in the right direction. And it could be different ones. So everybody has a different plan. It's not one size fits all. It's all about who the individual and get to know the individual at a personal level. So some of them might be going back to school. Some of them might be going to a vocational career. Some of them might be getting some sort of help, whatever it may be. This is something that I do. So that's something we have to make sure that those fundings come more to the community. We need more like the Avondale Restorative Justice Community Court. And just to make a correction, this is not only for people that live in Avondale. We had a lot of participants from Belmont, Cragin, or around the neighborhoods that are part of this initiative. So we want to make sure that we do that, but also go back to our youth programs. And I will continue saying, because that's a passion of mine, our youth need to be involved and make sure that they have something to do, whether it's the summer, something that one of the neighboring elements do very well, which is Olive Cardona, is during the summer he has a summer program where the kids come out from all the neighborhoods and they participate in baseball, softball, it doesn't matter. This is a non-competitive time for them to be there. And it is, again, kids from all the community get together and get involved. So we need to see that more, and we need to see that on the 30th ward. We have I always say we have so many athletic people in our community that I'm going to make sure that they are participating and also bringing those initiatives to the community.
Thank you. Ms. Gutierrez, same question.
I think this is where we bring in our community-based organizations. And as a former director of policy at a local community-based organization, the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, right here in Belmont, Cragin, that's when we go and we lobby the state. and we lobby the city and we lobby the federal government to get the resources that we need to bring back into our communities. The programming, it exists, right? But let's work with our community-based organizations. They are at the forefront of making sure that that after-school programs, that summer youth employment programs are coming into our areas, and that we get to work not only with that, but with our small businesses. Bring them together. We have a beautiful community, a very smart community of teachers and professors and landscapers and carpenters and everyone. Let's bring them out so that we can have outlets for youth to participate in. That's why I want community-based organizations to sit at the table with me, so that when they are filling out those grants to get money, that I know about it, so that I can take my voice downtown and make sure that funding is coming to our communities, right? The first question that we were asked was, how are we gonna build coalitions, right? If we're gonna build coalitions, we need to work with those nonprofits. They're the ones who are filling out the grant work. They're the ones who are doing that hard work. And what they need is someone who's gonna go downtown and be a bold voice and make sure that funding is coming here. That is an alderman's job, is to make sure that resources are coming back to the 30th Ward. And if we're not bold and if we're not loud about it, we're gonna get lost in the cracks. And that's something that I refuse to let happen here.
Mr. Williams, same question.
Thank you. Just very briefly, Jessica, if you want to endorse the bike grid, both JuanPablo and myself have endorsed that, so you should take. When have you done this? Because I just checked their website. Yeah. I messed that one up. But yeah, no. So one of the number one things that is stolen is laundry detergent, followed by baby formula. So what we're seeing is these are crimes of desperation, right? And so this means we need jobs that are paying, paying a full, a living wage. And what that means is we have to stop these austerity cuts that have been happening throughout this entire city. Anytime there is an austerity cut, that is an attack, that is an assault on Black and brown communities. Because my father was a postman, and the way he was able to put food on the table was through a good government job. My mother was a construction worker. She was able to put food on the table through a good government job. We need to bring back our strong government jobs, and we need to also support our unions, because our unions are the only way we can actually fight for a livable wage. I saw my mother out there fighting in 1998 for a strike for a livable wage. And the only way she was able to do that was through a union. So we have to have leaders who are out there ready to support a union. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think a huge solution, a huge part of the solution for crime is youth development and investing in our youth. I, like Warren, also participated in a lot of programs at my neighborhood park growing up here in the city. And it shaped me. It helped me make friends. It helped me build my leadership skills. It helped me stay active after school and make sure that I wasn't falling in with the wrong crowd. So I think we need to double down our efforts in investing in our youth. We have resources already in the 30th Ward and in the city. We have our schools, we have our parks, and we have our community organizations. We need to lean into them and make sure that they're creating more programming and that we're supporting them in creating more programming for our youth. That is why I want to establish a youth committee. I want to engage residents 14 to 24, bring them into the aldermanic office and say, what do you want to see? What do you need to succeed? And then invest in that and make sure that we're responsive to those residents as well. Even though they can't vote, they should have a say in what we do here in the 30th Ward. Yo quiero invertir en el desarrollo de la juventud. Quiero asegurar que la juventud tenga la misma oportunidad que yo tuve creciendo aquí en la ciudad. Yo fui como Warren a muchos parques, a los parques en mi vecindario, y ahí tuve la oportunidad de hacer muchos amigos, de desarrollar mi liderazgo y de asegurar, mis padres estaban seguros que yo estaba en un local donde iba a estar seguro y tenía actividades para hacer. Entonces yo quiero usar los recursos que ya tenemos aquí en el distrito y también en la ciudad, nuestros parques, las escuelas, las organizaciones comunitarias y reinvertir en ellos, ayudarles a ellos a encontrar más recursos para que desarrollen más programas para la juventud.
Right, on the topic of education, we're excited. Education in Chicago and across the nation is currently facing many controversial topics, such as gender-neutral bathroom policies, CRT, testing for accountability, and/or selective enrollment. Pick one. Tell us your stance on it, and then what is your plan to engage the community that may be divided?
La educación en Chicago y en todo el país se enfrentan actualmente a muchos temas controvertidos, como las políticas de baños neutrales al género, CRT, pruebas de responsabilidad y o inscripción selectiva. Elija uno, díganos su postura al respecto y luego, ¿cuál es su plan para involucrar a la comunidad que puede estar individida?
I think first of all, we need to make sure that our schools are fully funded. We need to make sure that we're investing, right, in our teachers and our community members. We need to make sure that, in the case of selective enrollment schools, right, we need all schools to be excellent. We need to, we hear way too much about, the bad things that happen at schools. Why aren't we talking about the great things that our administrators are doing, that our teachers are doing, that our scholars and our that our youth are doing? No one wants to talk about that. We need to put that at the forefront. And we need to make sure, like I said, that our schools are funded equally and equitably. Making sure that all of the LSCs are meeting together, right? Different LSCs meet by themselves, right? Our schools have a lot in common. Let's build a community where everyone is talking to each other, because the less that we're communicating, the more we're falling through the cracks. And I think that that's really problematic, right? I think we also have, we have lots of charter schools in our neighborhoods. There's a moratorium right now on charter schools, but that's gonna end in 2025. Charter schools, they're public schools too, and we need to make sure that they're all fully funded. Whether it's a traditional public school or whether they're charter schools, and that all children are being seen and that they're being invested in, and that's why we need that bold voice, right? And that's why we need to continue to build coalitions between us and our state representatives, right, who are at the forefront of making sure that of where the funding is going. I think we've taken a step in the right direction, and we have an elected school board, so I'm excited to be able to work with that elected school board.
Thank you, Mr. Prieto.
Thank you. As a CPS alum and a parent of a CPS student, I'm fully invested in making sure that our schools are supported and that make sure that they're fully and equitably funded. I've been supporting public education for my entire adult life, from founding the Alumni Association for Northside, serving 2 terms as a community rep on the Northside College Prep LSC, and recently helping a group of parents and community members rally around and advocate for a playground, a long-awaited playground at Scammon Elementary. We need to make sure that our teachers, staff, principals, and parents are fully supported in making sure that they have the resources to provide a world-class education, regardless of what school or what neighborhood you're from, because this is a world-class city. So we need to make sure that we first start having the conversation of fully funding our public schools before we want to lift a moratorium on charter schools. We need to ensure that staff at these schools have the resources they need to shape the future generation. I think you've asked us to select a topic that you listed there. I think selective enrollment is a hot topic. I would like to see a public school system that caters to students, to their needs, that teaches to them, not a cookie cutter box that even if you're in selective enrollment, it's kind of this same curriculum. I want to make sure that students get to go to a school that caters to their needs. If they're a hands-on student, let's get them to a school that's going to cater to that. If they are computer science focused, let's get them to that. Necesitamos asegurar que nuestras escuelas tienen el apoyo para formar la próxima generación de liderazgo. Nosotros tenemos que asegurarnos que estamos apoyando a las maestras, a los directores, para que ayuden a formar la próxima generación.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, I'm going to read the question just one more time to make sure. Education in Chicago and across the nation is currently facing many controversial topics, such as gender-neutral bathroom policies, CRT, testing for accountability, and selective enrollment. Please choose one and tell us your stance on it, and then what is your plan of engaging the community that may be divided?
Yeah, I do support CRT because like Latino history is American history, Black history is American history, Asian American history is American history, Indigenous history is American history, and right now we have far-right extremists telling us that our history is problematic. I want to say that again. If people telling us that our history is problematic, and that is unacceptable. In the way that I will work to heal United neighborhood is like I take the route of what Jose Jimenez and what Fred Hampton chose, and they like chose solidarity. We have to work with each other, we have to listen to each other, we have to understand each other, and that is why CRT is one of the most important things that is going on in our education system today. Because if we don't know each other's history, we can never understand each other. I did not know my own history as a Black man in this country until I was an adult. I still know less about Latino history because it is not taught to us, and that is unacceptable.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz, same question.
As a mother of 2 CPS students and being part of the local school council, one, I will answer your questions, but we want to make sure that our teachers and our schools are receiving the resources that they need, regardless in what community they're in. And to answer your question, we have to consider in something that a lot of families are talking, it is about selected enrollment. We have where residents who live, we have some selected enrollment schools in our community who they're like, I live across the street from a school, but my child cannot attend that school because again, it's a select enrollment. So we have to create a balance where if they want to stay with select enrollment, there is a percentage of the kids in the community can attend those schools because it is unfair. There are children who live around a community and a school that is there, they have to go far away because they're not part of the select enrollment. But this is where the community also come into play. Parents who are very involved, I have met a lot of parents for the Parent Mentor program and other residents that we can come all together and say this is what we want and this is the solution, but also holding our elected officials accountable to make sure that this is something in discussion and that we're addressing what the situation is, but what the solutions we want. Again, everybody wants to be part of their neighborhood schools and we have to address the situation. Yo he hablado con muchos padres de que dicen, yo quiero que mi hija o mi hijo vaya a esta escuela, pero porque tienes requisitos, mi hijo no puede ir. Y eso es injusto porque vivimos en una comunidad que no es justo que nuestros hijos vayan a otra escuela lejos y no puedan ir a la escuela que pertenecen por los requisitos. So, tenemos que todos trabajar como comunidad y hablar con nuestros elected officials para decir los cambios que queremos ver, pero eso es algo que tenemos que abordar todos juntos y realmente platicar porque es algo que está afectando a la comunidad y otra vez, esto es la educación de nuestros hijos.
Thank you so much. Moving on to economic development. previous administrations across the city have based their decisions on individual prerogative, community advisory councils, and public meetings. Specific to our community, what will your process be for vetting developments, both large and small, and for zoning changes requests?
Tema de desarrollo económico. Las administraciones anteriores en toda la ciudad basaron sus decisiones en la prerrogativa individual. Los consejos los consejos consultivos comunitarios y las reuniones públicas específico para nuestra comunidad. ¿Cuál será su proceso para investigar los desarrollos, tanto grandes como pequeños, y para las solicitudes de cambio de zonificación?
Thank you. So this is one of those things that is very important to me because with my work in 30th United and Palenque LSNA, we worked with the Belmont Triangle that was supposed to be luxury condominiums. And 30th United, Palenque LSNA, and myself, we got 50 people together. And it took 50 of us to go to his office and demand that was 100% affordable housing. This process should not be this hard. Working class people do not have time like myself to be a full-time organizer out there like door knocking, organizing. That is why I will do community-driven zoning. What that means is we have community meetings about any development or any zoning change like that to make sure that our entire community is being heard. Not just myself rubber stamping things and not just a committee that I choose, because that inherently can have flaws. It needs to be the entire community involved in these processes.
Thank you. Ms. Gutierrez?
I mean, zoning changes, zoning variations, that's an alderman's bread and butter. That's, probably the most abused thing that an alderman can do, right? Is yay or nay, say yes or say no at their will. And I think that voice needs to be returned back to the community. I believe in community-based zoning. I want to have an advisory board in which all of our community members are welcomed to not only make a decision, right, with me, but also learn, right, and educate our community members on what exactly zoning is, right? Make sure that that all of the terminology, right, that can be very intricate many times, right, that everybody really understands why it is so important that the community is part of zoning changes and zoning variations, right? It is directly, it will directly affect new housing development, right? The 30th Ward is gonna be a hot spot for developers. It's already happening. Gentrification has torn up and devastated our communities. And the one way that we can fight back is making sure that our community is at the table making the decisions. There's one thing that I know really scares a developer, is a lot of community members in the room making decisions together as a community. And that's what I want to see happen. So any developer, any zoning change that comes into the 30th Ward is going to be heard by the community.
Development in the 30th Ward and frankly in the city of Chicago needs to be community driven so that we are not displacing longtime residents. We need to increase, part of the solution to stabilize housing prices is we need to increase the inventory of housing in the 30th Ward so that we can put the power of the market back into the hands of renters and that any greedy landlord can't overcharge for rent because the renters will have that power. I have a track record at CTA of setting aggressive goals for community benefits on our projects, and I will do the same thing with developers coming to the 30th Ward. We will come together as a community, decide what our goals are going to be around affordable housing, green space, and other community benefits, and we will tell the developers what they're going to build here. The tone that I'm going to set on day one is if you're coming in as a developer to the 30th Ward, you need to meet with the community before you draw your design. before, because you want to have that community input. Ensure that community input in your design. Don't come design it and then say, oh, now we want your input. It's too late. We've invested too much money in there. So we want to make sure that we set that tone as early as we can. We also want to make sure that on larger developments like the Belmont Triangle, the Kindred Hospital that closed on the east side of the ward, that we have community space so that we can gather. So quiero asegurar que el desarrollo de bienes raíces en el distrito y también en la ciudad sea lanzado de la comunidad, que ustedes tengan una voz en ese proceso y asegurar que cada proyecto tenga metas en la vivienda, que tenga metas para espacio verde. Yo he hecho eso en la CTA, he puesto metas de beneficios comunitarios y lo haré con cada proyecto aquí en el Distrito 30.
It is important that we take all of our residents' ideas and concerns into consideration. We live in the community. We know what we want to see in our communities, and therefore we have to have a community zoning committee where we all come to the table and share the things that we want to see in our community. However, we talk about all these different committees, all this different input, but where things get a little complicated, right? Because everybody wants something different. So what my experience in management, I'm very detailed and organized and strategic what I do. We have to set expectations. We have to put people there in charge. And yes, these are residents in their community who are gonna be leading these committees, who are gonna be part of it, who we're gonna meet either weekly or monthly, I rather say monthly basis, to talk about the situations that happen. But more importantly, we have to set the expectations very clear to these developers of what we want to see. Me talking to a amount of residents, we do want to see green space. We want to see solar energy. We want to see clean energy coming into these developers, because we want community gardens. We want where our residents can walk to our parks, again, to these gardens, and it is critical for them to be part of that. So we got to make sure that we do it, but we do it very strategic, and also meeting with the community first of the projects that we have in mind, and set meetings with the developers. Let's not have a middle person here. The developer and the community and my office meet and talk about the expectations that we want, and let the developers know what we want. Again, we have to have a good balance of bringing opportunities to community, but doing it the right way. And that's why I'm running, because I'm doing it for the right reasons. I mentioned to you before, I do have another engagement that I already have planned way before the forum. So I appreciate everybody taking the time being here. I know we're all busy and we have things to do, but thank you for the opportunity. And please feel free to visit my website or send me an email if you have additional questions, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for taking such a role.
Continuing on, walking through our neighborhoods, you can see the countless empty storefronts, which have remained vacant for years, if not decades. What will you do to revitalize the 30th Ward economy and welcome small business owners to set shop here?
Al caminar por nuestros vecindarios pueden ver innumerables espacios vacíos que han permanecido vacíos durante años y no décadas. ¿Qué harán para revitalizar la economía del Distrito 30 y dar la bienvenida a los propietarios de pequeñas empresas para que se instalen aquí?
We will start with Mr. Prieto.
Thank you for that question. As you just said, when you drive down Belmont, Addison, or Milwaukee, you see a lot of vacant storefronts. That is a poor reflection in our community, and I want to use my expertise in small business development to make sure that we are filling those vacant storefronts. Just by show of hands, if the process were easier to open a business, how many of you in the audience would be business owners? Or how many are business owners? Got one, right? I want to help realize those dreams for those business owners and make sure that we have a streamlined process at the city so that we can get doors open quicker and customers in the door so that small businesses can succeed. We have a unique opportunity with the amount of COVID relief dollars that are coming to the city to make sure that we're supporting the small businesses that are here already, that have survived the pandemic, and make sure that we're investing in them so that they can make investments in their business and grow. And also, from day one, setting the tone that the 30th Ward is open for business, bringing more small businesses in, and also telling folks that are the residents that are not in the 30th Ward, come to the 30th Ward and enjoy the businesses that we have, the great restaurants that we have. We want to bring people into the ward to participate in our economy. Si usted maneja en la Belmont, Addison o Milwaukee, uno ve que hay muchos locales vacíos. Eso es una mala reflexión de nosotros como una comunidad, y yo quiero usar mi experiencia en el desarrollo de empresas pequeñas para atraer más negocios al Distrito 30. Pregunté hace un momento, ¿hay algún dueño de un negocio hoy aquí? Y una persona levantó la mano. Yo quiero ayudar a realizar ese sueño para los que quieren abrir negocios y hacer el proceso mucho más fácil en la ciudad para que puedan abrir más rápido y puedan atraer los clientes lo más pronto posible. Tenemos que atraer más negocios y apoyar a los negocios que ya están aquí, que sobrevivieron la pandemia con el dinero que tenemos en la ciudad.
Thank you. Earlier, or last summer, I was going for a nice little bike ride, as I do, and I saw this little bar that I had been driven by it 100 times, but in biking, I saw it for the first time. I pulled over and I got out there and I grabbed a drink. And the point of this story is that this wasn't just a thing that happened to me. When you put in protected bike lanes, businesses see revenue go up by 8% minimum, because people are going slower and they're able to see what is going on in their neighborhood. That's something I can do as an alderman instantly. When it goes to City Hall, we need a vacancy tax. We have too many empty storefronts that are essentially being held hostage by developers who do not even live in the city, because they're waiting for it to be the next big boom, and they're trying to price it as high as possible, so people can't even afford the rent to make a small business happen. And so those are the two big things. But we also, when we talk about small business development, we also have to make sure that gentrification is not happening in this area. So that means we have to make sure we do first-time homeowner grants. And we also have to make sure that we are talking to our state reps and pushing them into getting rid of to lift the ban. Thank you.
We need to reduce the red tape that we have. We're still recovering from the pandemic. And I think that one way that we could help our small businesses or small businesses and people who would like to open small businesses in the 30th Ward is to, one, reduce and eliminate business licensing fees, right? Reduce sidewalk cafe licensing fees and fast track inspections. There are ways, right, and we've already seen some red tape and bureaucracy removed so that we can get back on our feet, so that we can start filling up those storefronts. Another wonderful idea, and something that I've seen come to fruition, not only in Belmont Cragin, but in other neighborhoods in Humboldt Park, are business incubator programs for small businesses and people in our community who need help, right? Establishing small businesses is opening incubators and making sure that we're getting the state and municipal funding into our community-based organizations so that we could run these programs. We have space, right? We have these spaces. We can use that in the incubator program, in the meantime, so that small business owners are learning, right, how to stay afloat in this economy. Another thing we need to do in terms of economic development is audit TIFs and audit our special service areas. We have a special service area here in the 30th Ward, and that's not far from Belmont Cragin. It's right on Belmont and Central. And over $750,000 a year goes to the maintenance of a filthy, dirty garage, right? That's something, we need to know where the money is going so that we could funnel it back into our communities.
affordability, property taxes, and gentrification. On the topic of affordability, property taxes, and gentrification, as our city and community members struggle with stable housing or experiencing homelessness, how will you address the rapid displacement of your middle and low-income constituents?
Sobre el tema de accesibilidad, los impuestos a la propiedad y a la gentrificación, mientras nuestra ciudad y los miembros de la comunidad luchan con una vivienda estable o experimentan la falta de viviendas. ¿Cómo abordará el rápido desplazamiento de sus electores de ingresos medios y bajos?
I think one, common big topic that we've been talking about is zoning. Once again, if we allow aldermen to have the power and the only power and the final say in zoning changes, then that means the developers can come into our neighborhoods, right? And they're gonna get those variance changes, they're gonna get those zoning changes, and that is one way that we see property taxes going up. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that our community is at the forefront of saying yes or no to whatever a developer wants to do in our community, right? We need to be the final say. We need to be the main voice. We need to be that bold voice. Working with the Cook County Assessor's Office and the Board of Review and making sure that those resources are in our offices so that our community members don't have to go to them. Gentrification, its engine is revved, right, when the community isn't working together. And when an alderman doesn't share, right, and is not transparent with everything that's going on in our neighborhoods, right, that they just, what was one of the questions about the festival that's coming into Reese Park, right? When we have aldermen who blindside us and don't allow for the community to say yes or no to what's going on, it's those kinds of festivals that have nothing to do with our community, that come in and destroy our green spaces, right? That is what revs the engine on gentrification. And you know what? Because in these areas, there is such a low voter turnout, you know what they say to Belmont, Cragin? You don't have to pay attention to them. They're not gonna complain. We need new leadership. We need someone who's going to be a community organizer, because at the pit and at the soul of an alderman should be a community organizer that's ready to bring the community together to say, no, not here, it's our decision.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you. I remember one of the scariest times in my life was, I remember one day my landlord walked up to me and he was just like, your rent's gonna double. And I was gonna have to move out of the neighborhood that I had fallen in love with. And this was the first time this happened to me. This happened to me again, a few blocks away from my previous apartment. This is an issue that is affecting real world people like myself, like everyone here. And I think what we need to be doing is taking a look at like real solutions. And we need to be taking a look at who owns the houses in our ward, right? We have to stop selling our houses to like developers who don't live here. That's why we must expand first-time homeowner grants. Because coming up with $20,000 to $30,000, it's a lot. But if you take that down to $2,000 to $3,000 just to put a down payment on a home, that is something that is tangible. Because like I don't think I'll ever be able to buy a home in this ward, and that like makes me sad. Like that makes it so I never like. I want to raise my children here. I'm running for office here. There's some love here. And there's so many other people who I talk to who are scared of losing their house. I spoke to a woman not too long ago, and she was just like, I've been living here for 40 years, and I would want my next home to be the grave. She had a dark sense of humor, but the point that she was trying to make was she wanted to live her golden years in dignity. And due to increasing property taxes, that might not happen. That is why we need progressive revenue streams like Bring Home Chicago, which is a real estate tax that will only affect the top 5%, but that will ease the burden of 95% of people living in this ward. That is why we need to do things like the LaSalle Street tax, a small transactional tax on the wealthiest. Let's tax the rich so the rest of us can actually live in the place we want to live.
Yeah, we've heard, my team and I have heard over and over again, if it's not public safety, it's property taxes. And the first thing we need to do, and I am happy to lead this charge, and I will lead this charge in City Council, is to eliminate the automatic escalator on property taxes. There should not be an automatic escalator on property taxes. When we need to raise property taxes, the alders need to go out to the community, talk about why it needs to be raised, how it's going to be used, and get their input on it, and take a vote. You all elect us to vote and to make hard decisions, and we need to go to the community to make those decisions. We also need to pass Bring Chicago Home, and make sure that there is a solution, a funded solution to homelessness, so that we're bringing folks housing. We need to make sure that, again, we are working with the community. The community is dictating to the developer what type of goals that we're going to establish on each project, to make sure that we are not displacing residents, to make sure that we are increasing the inventory of housing in the ward, to stabilize prices, and so that doesn't happen to people like Warren, right? We should not have a landlord coming to someone and saying, I'm going to double your rent, because they can. We need to make sure there's enough available housing so that the power is in with the renter, not the landlord. Lo primero que tenemos que hacer es eliminar el aumento automático de los impuestos a la propiedad. Ustedes nos eligen a nosotros para hacer decisiones y para tomar un voto. Si necesitamos aumentar esos impuestos, tenemos que venir a la comunidad y hablar con ustedes y tomar ese voto. También tenemos que trabajar con cada proyecto que va a venir al distrito y asegurar que no va a desplazar a los residentes que están aquí.
Thank you. Mental health. What is your plan on providing needed mental health resources to your constituents?
Salud mental. ¿Cuál es el plan para proporcionar los recursos de salud mental necesarios a sus electores?
Let's start with you, Mr. Prieto.
Thank you. As you've heard all of us talk about, we need to increase access to mental health services. And the first step is reopening the mental health clinics that were closed years ago, and making sure that we increase the access to mental health services through either public or private providers. Making sure that it's treated the same as physical health, because it is the same as physical health. That requires an education campaign to make sure that residents understand that going to get mental health services, there is no stigma behind it, that it is for you to be healthier. So we need to bring in nonprofits and experts in these areas to make sure that we're having an intentional approach about how we increase that access to mental health services. La primera manera que vamos a traer más recursos para la salud mental es asegurar que reabrir las clínicas que se cerraron de la ciudad, y asegurar que tenemos una campaña de educación en la comunidad para que la comunidad entienda que la salud mental es lo mismo que la salud física, y encontrar maneras de trabajar con expertos en la salud mental, trabajar con organizaciones comunitarias que ya proveen esos servicios para asegurar que los residentes pueden acceder esos servicios, y asegurar que hablen nuestro idioma y que entiendan nuestra cultura, para que puedan hablar con nosotros y quitar ese estigma de la salud mental.
Thank you. You know, as when I was 19 when I was diagnosed with epilepsy. It just happened one day. And when you have an experience like that of you living your life for 19 years and all of a sudden your life has changed, that fundamentally changes how you think about things. We never know when a mental health emergency could happen to us. We never know. And it can happen to anyone in this room. And that's why we need to make sure that not only we reopen our mental health facilities, right? That's something that we should have never closed in the first place. But we also need to make sure that they are affordable for working class people. because I know what it's like to not have the medication that you need to save your life. I had to sit in Cook County Hospital for 8 hours because they are understaffed just to get life-saving medication that I need. So when we talk about bringing back our mental health facilities, they need to be fully funded. And they need to be funded with people who care and with a deep understanding of the situation that you are in. Thank you.
I think it's important that we start in our schools. Let's have an ordinance that in every school that we're having classes on mental health, that we're starting with children, right? Because what better way to help educate the adults at home than bringing than educating our children in their classrooms, right? And bringing in parents, working with parent mentors, making sure that all those programs are in our schools and that they're fully funded, so that we could kind of bridge that educational gap, right, that exists between some of our communities and mental health. I want to open up a mental health clinic here in Belmont, Cragin. What better place than for us to have access to mental health clinicians so that we can start bridging those gaps. But I think at the end of the day, it all starts in our schools, right? It all starts in funding our neighborhoods and funding our schools and making sure that our students, they're going to be at the forefront, right? They're our future. And if they're our future, then we need to invest in our students. And let's start there, making sure that we have social workers, right? Making sure that we have social workers that are showing up to help, right? Our police officers. I think those are all really important things, and those are things that we can make demands at City Hall. But once again, if we're not sending someone who's ready to be bold, who's ready to be loud and to be obnoxious downtown and to make those demands, it's just, it won't happen. But I'm optimistic. We have 16 aldermen that are stepping down to go on to greener pastures, who never cared about mental health and, shut down 6 of our clinics. So I want to work with other aldermen and City Hall to make sure that we bring all of that back.
Public transit. 1 in 4 Chicago residents do not own a car, according to the 2020 U.S. Census. How will you advocate to restore CTA buses and L lines to their pre-pandemic levels of timeliness, frequency, and safety?
1 de cada 4 residentes de Chicago no poseen un automóvil. Según el censo de 2020, ¿cómo abogará por su restaurar los autobuses de la CTA y las líneas L a sus niveles de puntualidad, frecuencia y seguridad previos a la pandemia?
I think we still need to, give our public transportation some time for healing. And even with that said, we're still moving 900,000 people every single day on the CTA. And I think recruitment's down. Let's make sure that we're recruiting from here in the 30th Ward. They're good paying jobs, right? But it's like you don't know how to get to the job, right? That's why we need to make sure that our ward offices are offices of resources, right? Come to my office, right? We'll help you fill out those applications and make sure that the recruitment is coming here from the 30th Ward. We also need more transparency from the CTA. Quarterly meetings with the CTA's president is going to be urgent. City Hall has not been able to get the CTA president to show up. He won't show up. And that leads it doesn't matter how transparent your aldermen are gonna be when we have other facets of leadership that aren't showing up as well. So I think making sure that the CTA president is coming to our meetings and that we're building with him is going to be extremely urgent. Also making sure that we have increased canine patrols and security and making sure that cleanliness is up with the CTA. I think that there's a lot that we can do. I think it's really important that we start showing the importance, right, of using the CTA. I've lived in countries where using public transportation is part of one person's identity. I don't feel like that's how it is in Chicago. People don't exactly want to ride, public transportation. Let's make it part of intrinsically who we are, so that we're not having to use our cars and we're able to have a sense of being with the CTA.
Mr. Williams.
So I believe that transportation is a right. And currently that right is being taken away from the entirety of the 30th Ward. We are a transit desert. That means like there's only one piece of rapid transportation, and that is on the Addison Blue Line. So what we need to do is like expand the our CTA, and we also need to make it universal and free. And this is done in other cities. And the reason I believe in this so strongly is because our children have to pay to go to school. I'm gonna say that again, our children have to pay to go to school. That means if you are very poor, you may be choosing between eating and getting an education. And in Chicago, in the wealthiest country in the world, we should be ashamed of that. So transportation is something that is extraordinarily important to me, and we need we need someone with a vision of how we're going to expand public transportation. Sorry, it's been a long day. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Having the privilege of serving as a director of diversity programs at CTA, I've had the unique opportunity of working with the president and the staff there, and I know that they are dedicated to making sure that we provide safe and reliable service to our residents. Transit was hit hard during the pandemic, and it is a recruiting issue. We need to make sure that we are getting the CTA staff, the HR staff out to the community to recruit from the community so that we can fill the vacancies that are there, so that we can come again and provide the service that we had pre-pandemic levels. I want to make sure that we also use the infrastructure money that's coming and invest in our transit, expand our transit lines where we can, put in bus rapid lines where we can, so that we can give them signal priority, make sure there's dedicated bus lanes so that buses can travel faster through the neighborhoods. I have a public history of putting together these outreach events in the community and making sure that the community is aware of when CTA comes, the community shows up because they know there's opportunities. I will bring the CTA, other city departments and agencies to the 30th Ward to recruit from here, because those are good paying jobs, and we'll make sure that the 30th Ward residents can access those jobs. CTA is the backbone of how this city moves, and we need to continue to invest in it. Yo he tenido la oportunidad de servir como el director de Diversity Programs en la CTA, y he tenido el privilegio de trabajar con el presidente y con el equipo que él tiene, y yo sé que ellos están dedicados a proveer un sistema que sirve a los residentes. Tenemos que reinvertir el dinero que viene del gobierno federal de la infraestructura para mejorar el tránsito aquí en esta ciudad, y también traer a la agencia al Distrito 30 para reclutar.
Thank you. Quick fire round. So yes or no answer on the first one, 10 seconds please, and we won't translate these. So first one, do you plan on raising taxes? Yes or no? We'll start with you, Ms. Gutierrez.
Absolutely not.
On the top earners, yes.
On the millionaires and billionaires, yes.
Thank you. Next, yes or no question. SROs in schools. We'll start with Mr. Williams.
No.
Right, and last one, pro-choice or pro-life? Ms. Gutierrez?
Strongly pro-choice.
Pro-choice.
Right, thank you so much. We will start with closing statements, 2 minutes for each. And we'll start with you, Mr. Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been in Chicago my entire life, and we have asked for the exact same things over and over again. I've seen the same needs. We want air that's breathable. We want clean streets, and we want safe streets. And I think everyone here in this room can agree that they want those three things. My father has been asking for these things. We've been asking for these basic necessities for decades now. And why are we not getting them? Because this is Chicago, and the machine puts in one person and they replace them with another when it comes to politics. They come in and they replace them. And so that is when I started organizing. I took under what Jose Jimenez and Fred Hampton said. We need a rainbow coalition of Latino, Black, White, Asian, and Indigenous folks working together in solidarity. That is the only way we can beat that machine. And that is why, if you look at my numbers, my average contribution is $100 from inside of this ward, because I want to be held accountable to you and not the millionaires, not the billionaires, and not this Chicago machine. And that is why I am the most endorsed candidate, and that is why I'm endorsed by organizations that have a proven track record of fighting for the people, because they know that when I win, that I will get out there and fight with people. And I know I'm going to win because I have the people behind me. And I've always had the people behind me. I don't have a lot of money, but I got a lot of power and people. And that is all we need. That is all we need, is people power. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today and to show you my enthusiasm for public service. I'm a trusted public servant who has over 2 decades of experience of helping my community and almost a decade in municipal government. I'm not connected to the old political machine, which means as your alderman, I will work for you, the residents, not the mayor and not special interest groups. I want to make sure, again, that we have the community with us every step of the way and that my office is accessible always to you. We're going to have ward nights, 1 night a week where the office will be open late, ward weekends, 1 weekend a month where the office will be open Saturdays and Sundays so that residents can come in to speak to me directly, no appointment necessary. I've talked about the committees that I want to establish, participatory budgeting, again, to make sure that you all are making the decisions for your neighborhoods and for your communities. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad de hablar hoy y demostrar mi entusiasmo para servir la comunidad. Yo tengo más de 2 décadas de servicio para ayudar a mi comunidad y casi 1 década como un funcionario público. Como un funcionario público de confianza que no está relacionado con la maquinaria vieja de Chicago. O sea que como concejal yo voy a trabajar para ustedes los residentes, no para el alcalde y no para intereses especiales. Yo quiero asegurar que la comunidad tiene acceso a mi oficina cuando lo necesite. Voy a tener 1 noche a la semana donde mi oficina va a estar abierta tarde y un fin de semana cada mes donde la oficina va a estar abierta sábados y domingos para que los residentes puedan hablar conmigo sin tener que hacer cita. Muchas gracias por su tiempo hoy.
Thank you so much, Camras School and Belmont Cragin United and Alonso. Tonight we've outlined plans for education, public safety, economic development, transportation, amongst many. I want my office to be a hub for resources, for city resources, and a community resource center. I don't want my office to be the only place that we can meet. Let's meet in schools. Let's make sure that we're making our public schools centers of resources, centers of community, so that we meet more parents, so that we're meeting with more students. I think we need to make all of our community-based organizations, all of our schools, centers of getting hard work done. We want to face the hard questions and have bold progress. So once again, in my first 100 days, I want to hire a full-time public safety liaison, have a ward-wide infrastructure audit, an audit of TIFs and SSA money, and establishing a zoning advisory council, host education and public safety town halls. I think those are good ways for us to get to know our community, right? I've had people ask me, what's the first ordinance? What are the first things you're gonna support? I'm gonna support my community. I'm gonna go block by block and I'm gonna meet every single one of you and we're gonna find out where the holes are and we're gonna fix them together and we're gonna make sure that we organize and we're gonna continue to organize, because at the root and at the core of me is a community organizer who wants to get my hands dirty, and I wanna get to work. So on February 28th, right, we're gonna have some results, and it's gonna be time that we get to work in our community, and that the 30th Ward, specifically out here out west, my home in Belmont, Cragin, right, we're not gonna see these types of voting from the past, right? We're gonna be out there in the polls, and we're gonna organize, right? Because that's what we know how to do best here.
All right, thank you so much to Jessica Gutierrez, JuanPablo Prieto, and Warren Williams, and Ms. Ruth, of course. Thank you for coming out. Thank you to the Cameras Packing community for allowing us to stay tonight and have this happen. And thank you to the community for coming in tonight. We didn't get to use this guy. Oh, and Belmont Cragin United. So we're gonna squeak him one time. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna need your help again.